And there you go.
Holy smoke. Just like a real recording studio.
I'm impressed.
You're back.
I am back. Yes.
You ever feel like the world comes at you like a wild and crazy tiger and just comes to sometimes devour you? And
I've been there.
I've seen you just sit and grin at it when it does that.
Well, that's about all I can do. I can't outrun it.
Oh, boy. I got to say, we only do this every 3 weeks. I so look forward to getting a chance to visit with you like this. And we get to do this Roger Dykes Just Sayin podcast. And you got listeners lining up. And we got a big deal.
What's that?
YouTube.
Okay.
You've had your YouTube channel for just a little while. We clicked over to that. You're still a podcast, but we added the YouTube channel. And we had some Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders at first that we were going to bring in, but apparently they got a better offer. It's hard to believe.
Probably they found out it was Roger Dykes Just Sayin.
Oh, man. Hey, it's great that you're here. It looks like everything's up and running. Your camera looks great. Everything's just working like it's supposed to.
That's good.
I say we kick this deal off.
I'm all for it.
Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy. Now a quadriplegic, he has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes.
All right, Michael. Good to see you again today. Glad you could make it by, and we're looking forward to a good visit, and hopefully we'll do something entertaining.
Yes, and this is one of your first actual podcasts where there can be some YouTube footage.
That's what you're telling me. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
You're stepping into the world of showbiz here. I want to tell you.
No, Michael. I have never stepped in anything. I rolled into a whole lot.
Oh, Roger.
That minor, you keep forgetting. Claim to have been my friend all these years.
You never turn it off, do you? Never.
No, sir. But yes, I'm rolling into a new dimension.
Hey, folks, the first thing I want to mention is absolutely what I have been sworn to secrecy on that I will not mention on this podcast. And that is to tell everyone listening to this podcast that I can't tell you all the things that happened, even just this week, to Roger. Now, how's that? Don't you know your listeners like to hear that?
Oh, yeah, that was you're very helpful that way.
If you people were more important, we could share this with you.
Well, no, they are important enough. They're just things that happen that we don't share.
Oh, well. Now, let me follow up on that by saying, yes, there's some facts and figures that we're not going to be able to talk about today, but it ended very well. By the end of the week, literally by yesterday, it ended really well in that it's not a complete answer to so many issues that we brought up that Roger deals with as a paraplegic in a disabled society that he lives in. There were people that stepped forward that nobody saw coming. And I don't mean a bunch of people writing checks or trying to mend financial problems or this sort of thing. This was the nuts and bolts of the program that you were on some stuff that just seemed that you were at your wit's end. You were expected to be able to do things and know things, and the information was not trickling down to you, and it was making it impossible for you to do even just paperwork on your system. Now, again, Roger, I'm not telling the story because I told you, I promised you that I wouldn't. But the truth is, folks, a lot of your prayers got answered. It's not the complete solution. There's still a foundational problem of the fact that Roger is budgeted on decisions that were made 20, 30, 40 years ago. Those decisions are still in place and still, I'm just going to say this. The state government here in Texas has just really refused to be responsive to Roger. But Roger, as you say, you are still grateful.
Oh, absolutely. Because if it were not for what the state has done and is doing, I wouldn't be on this podcast. I would be sitting in a room watching I Love Lucy, I suspect, if she's still on TV. And as a result of the state's involvement, I'm able to do technologically wonderful things like be a presence on YouTube with video and audio together, which is exciting, and having friends like you and others that have come through and helped me out. I just finished being helped by a near dear friend and neighbor who came in this morning and helped me out, and voluntarily. And I appreciate all that sort of help, because that's things that money can't necessarily buy, even if I had the money.
Well, now, let me correct one thing that you
Absolutely.
just said. Let me correct you said friends and people like me. I am a professional, and the last thing that I would want is for the word to get out that I was doing something to help somebody. We send 18PR sends big bills to people, and as far as I know, you're one of them.
Well, as far as I know, I am too. I really wasn't talking financially there.
Oh, man. Well, enough about me. Let's talk about you, Roger. For folks that are listening to this show for the first time, I'm not, when you do a television show in this day and time, a lot of times they will open the show by doing a quick recap. Thinking that people may have forgotten what the situation is since the last episode, or that you may be watching for the first time. For those of you listening or watching for the first time, we want you to know that Roger has serious issues that are, man, there's no other way to put that, life-threatening, and can end his world. And to tell you how near to Roger's door this is, in the time since the last time we produced one of these podcasts, which we do this every 3 weeks with Roger. Since that time, the wolves literally came to your door, not through anything that you had done wrong, or not through mismanagement, or not thinking through every decision that you make, but simply because it just when you think it can't get any crazier, the word coming out of Austin on this issue or that issue, just when you think that you at least have it figured out to the point to where you know what the problems are, then, Roger, it actually gets more convoluted and more complicated, and it threatens to end your very existence, which what we're talking about when we say that is close down your home where you've lived all of your life and where you've centered all the things that you do and are still doing, and send you into a well, there's a lot of ways to put this, but it's a convalescent care facility, which would virtually eliminate 98% of everything that you do that still contributes to society all around you. And people depend on you.
Well, we try to be a contributing factor. And of course, that's what this program was designed for, was to keep people like me from having to go to facilities and could stay at home. And the whole point, the class program starts with community, and they want to keep disabled people in the community and functioning as much as is humanly possible. Of course, let's not be too, let's not be, what shall we say, naive. The reality is it's cheaper for me to live here under the budgetary system that they've got me under than it would be if they put me into some sort of facility.
That's the deal. I mean, so that's the whole deal. If people listen to this and they go, "Oh, just put him in a home." He's not. Apparently, he's not thankful for all that he has around him. The point is, you are living more inexpensively now than you would be if you went to a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week care facility.
Yes, sir, that is true, and that's the bottom line, the money line of why this program exists. So. And I'm extremely thankful for it. It's just that it needs to be updated, and it needs to have, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but it's getting now to a point, especially with the way inflation is going, that we are needing more money put into this program in order for me to find people who can work here, because the price tag is such that it's really not very conducive to finding people who want to work for what I can pay.
Well, okay, and let's just lay it out there, man. The fact is, and I know you feel like, gee whiz, we harp on this a lot, but it's real. Those wolves are still at your door.
Oh, absolutely. They haven't changed.
It's real to the point to where now, and this is more so right now today than it has been ever. Now you are not able to offer to a professional caregiver, which is what you need, not 24 hours a day, but a few hours in the morning, a few hours in the afternoon, some overnight stuff, in that you can't get in bed. You literally have to sleep in your wheelchair. And there's all kinds of dangers there that nobody wants to see or even hear about, but they're real and they're there if your caregiver overnight all of a sudden just isn't there. And the fact is, they can go to McDonald's or somewhere and flip burgers and make more money, and it gets harder and harder for you to be able to find reliable, dependable help when you need it, which is what the program is designed to do.
Right. Yeah. And they really need, I am a person that does not like to use the idea of throwing money at problems from government standpoint. But in this case, it's going to very quickly require more money, or all of us, not just me. Everybody's under the same system that I'm under, more or less. The major difference, and we've said this before, but in case people have either forgotten or they haven't heard the previous podcast, the real issue is that the program was built with the idea that family would be available to pick up the slack and do anything that needed to be done and not get paid for it necessarily. And that would be fine because that would be family responsibility. But in my case, as we've said before, I have no family in the area of any kind. And so therefore there is no family that's going to come in here and fill in the gaps. Every gap that gets filled is either filled by a paid caregiver or by a friend or a neighbor or whatever. And I do not want to in any way use people without them getting some sort of pay for it. But occasionally it just has to be that way. And I'm thankful for the friends I've got that can come in and help me, but I don't want to overuse those friends.
Roger, let me point out too, and this in no way is suggesting that it would take the place of what you just talked about, but you do have somewhat of a makeshift family. And that is, there is a growing family of listeners to your podcast that care about what happens to you. And they are the type of people who will write letters or emails, and they will pick up the phone and call those people that are elected to represent them in Austin to the state of Texas. And it's not just Texas. There are people in Roger's situation all over the United States, literally in other countries as well. The big thing here is that rarely does anyone, particularly where cerebral palsy is concerned, have a voice of any type. Why are you different?
Well, I'm primarily different because God blessed me at my birth. Yes, I lost a lot of things with brain damage at birth, but one thing that God did not take from me was my ability to speak and to think at the same time. And that, let me clarify that because that sounds confusing. When you have a speech problem, and anyone who's had a relative that's had a stroke or any type of brain damage that has gone to speech therapy, they will teach you how to form words and speak them as clearly as possible. And they can do that. That's their job, and they do it well. But the problem becomes this. When you have to stop and think, I will illustrate the point, I have to remember where my tongue goes before I can say that word.
Oh, man.
It slows everything down to a point that you have great difficulty in communicating because the listener doesn't want to wait that long. Or the listener already knows what you're trying to say, and they'll fill in the blanks for you. Now, because God blessed me the way he did, I can think and respond and talk instantaneously the way normal people do. Therefore, I have a voice, and I can express, I hopefully can articulate and express the thoughts of all disabled people in terms of what they're needing and what we're expecting government to come in and help us with, because government has volunteered to do this. I could live in a country where there is no help like this. I would not enjoy that at all. I'm very blessed to be in America. But when Americans and politicians develop programs to help the disabled, oftentimes in their best interest, they don't mean it bad toward us at all, but they have never experienced this. They've never lived on this side. So they, from their vantage point, develop the best program they know how to develop without necessarily getting the input of the people who are going to be living in that program. Also, over time, ideas that were wonderful 10 years ago are no longer wonderful because things have changed, developed, the society's changed, the economics have changed.
Yeah, even just over 10 years.
Yes. Would you be willing to go to work at any job, anywhere, and they tell you this is what you're going to make, and you go, okay, I can accept that, and they say, and there will never be a raise. No matter how hard you work or how little you work, the price is the same.
And plus, they can go anywhere. They can go out to eat, or they can go
Right.
to this place or that place, and they're going to see everybody around it making more than they do.
Of course.
It really makes it tough
Yeah.
for you to keep trained help.
Well, one of the reasons people stay at a job is because they have the hope of making more money there. When you take that hope away from them, there's no reason to stay. And that's the situation if you pay everybody the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Because the raises and the potential of making more money is what keeps people interested in working. But at the same time, you've got to be giving a price. You've got to be using a price that is comparable to what they can make in outside of this type of environment.
All right.
And that's where we have a problem.
I'm going to change the subject for just a moment here, because I feel like, we feel like constantly we have to bring people up to date who may not have listened to all the other episodes of Roger Dykes Just Saying. And what we've been talking about is the core situation that you are dealing with. The reason why it is so important is because you can have say, for instance, an overnight caregiver who decides to go do something else, or just wants a couple of days off, and you literally are stranded at home because there is nothing in your program that says, well, if we're going to allow for that, or the fact that there's a blizzard or something like that, and has answers for you that you can do. And you have to stay broke.
That's true.
You have to stay broke. And a lot of people will say, well, how does he afford a podcast? Well, let me just answer that, okay? We have not answered that directly. The way that happens is because there are other people involved that have nothing to do what Roger is spending or deciding to do that makes this podcast possible. They are not giving money to Roger. How does he afford what 18PR does? Because everybody knows we're kind of lavish. I can't believe I said that. But the point is that this is a unique situation, and it's not because Roger forks over a bunch of dollars, because he doesn't have it. He can't get help. He doesn't have it. The reason why all of this is important is because there are not immediate answers unless the state recognizes then there are more situations that Roger has to be responsible for than what they're allowing him to move and adjust and be responsible for. That being said, Roger, a lot of people listen to your podcast, and they don't realize, because they may not have heard the first few episodes, but I'm going to remind everyone that Roger, at a certain point in his life, was an entertainer and an after-dinner speaker. And people all over the place, Roger would travel in with a caregiver and perform and speak. And he was also known as America's #1 stand-up or sit-down comedian. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir. That sums up that part of my world rather nicely. And that was the most enjoyable time of my life, because that was what I enjoyed doing and still enjoy doing. But because of a lot of circumstances that are now in place, that's been removed from my possibility list.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I wouldn't still enjoy doing it if I could.
But you got a podcast, Roger. You got a podcast.
That's true. And one of the reasons to emphasize what you just said, some things are underwritten by other individuals in my world that allow me access and possibility to do because they were generous enough to work that out. It doesn't mean that I'm paying out a tremendous amount of money, but I'm not. But there are other individuals around who say, we'd like to see Roger succeed. We'd like to see Roger deal with this. Let me give you an illustration from the past. There was a point in time when I had the time and had the interest to get involved in some biblical studies. And there were individuals at that time that gave money to the institution to allow me to have that information and education. It didn't cost me anything, but they didn't give the money to me. They simply put the money into the institution, and then I could go get the information I needed to use as I wanted to. So that has gone on much of my life, a way of getting what people want, and yet it not showing up directly in my bank account to interfere with the money that and the services that the government allows me to have.
Because the government, in all their wisdom, will kick you off the program.
Yes.
Technology today has enabled intelligent people like you to be able to do a plethora of other things that contribute to society. Somewhere, somehow, somebody at the government level needs to wake up and go, hey, there are a lot of these people that can make the communities around them better, and we need to allow them to do that.
Well, I believe that certainly I won't go into the numbers, but the cap. Well, I will give you one number. For example, I'm on supplementary security income, SSI, and that is the door. That is the gatekeeper to everything else. You must be on that program in order to be able to get onto all the other programs. Okay, but for example, as of right now, the most money that I can have is $2,000, and that's nothing. If I exceed $2,000, I get kicked off the program, and that kicks me off everything else.
So it's safe to say you and I are not going to lunch afterwards, or if we are, you're not buying.
And you're right. So that means we're not going out to lunch because I know.
Doggone it, Roger.
Well, 18PR is such a big, luxurious company, as you pointed out, that they probably couldn't afford to take me to McDonald's anyway.
Roger, we're out of time. The proverbial podcast clock has wound down. And I would, as always, it is a great time visiting with you. Maybe by next episode, we could bring up a few more things that, but I think today was a good recap session, because I talk to people all the time. I say, hey, so do you listen to Roger Dykes? They go, oh, yeah. But then there are always new people coming on board that don't really understand all of the things that you're dealing with. And, oh, man, we just barely scratched the surface on stuff today. But I wanted to run through it all again right quick. A few days ago, I thought we might be getting ready to lose you. And what I mean by losing you, you and I would still be buddies. We would still talk. And I would still get to visit with you, but it would perhaps be hard, complicated for you to be able to set up and do the podcast with us. And that seems, for the time being, to have worked out. Now, it doesn't mean that you're still not tumbling and wrestling with the whole situation with hours and coordinating caregivers and all that sort of thing. But Roger, I tell you what I did today. When I went on with you, I just thanked the good Lord that we were going to do another Roger Dykes Just Sayin. And it means the world to me that you're here.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad I could be here. And I'm hoping that the things that you are mentioning that happened earlier in the week have now been put to rest, and that things will go back to normal, and I will not have to deal with all the demons that I was fighting with the state and with the agencies and this, that, and whatever that I went through earlier in the week, but we seemingly have it settled down. So I want to thank all the podcast listeners for all their prayers and their concern, because I believe that is what got me through it.
Roger Dykes, will you come back and do this again in 3 weeks?
I'm planning on it, Lord willing.
All right. Well, hasta la vista, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, podcasters, for listening.
You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to rogerdykes51@gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51@gmail.com. Our podcast reveals a new episode every 3 weeks. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.